couple of months ago, I spoke on Super Mario Kart and why I still think it's one of the worst Mario games out there. I will link that video in the description if you want to know why. Not only was that video fun to make, but it also sparked some interest in my channel, so I figured why not make a sequel. Super Mario Kart has also influenced me to go back and play the other Mario Kart games that I personally enjoy a lot more, so making another Mario Kart video was pretty much bound to happen. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 different Mario Kart games: Mario Kart 64, Mario Kart Wii, and Mario Kart 8. The title of this video says what it says, but I want to clarify real quick that I don't think these games are bad. In fact, I love all these games equally. It's just that within these games, they each have their own flaws that make me believe that they are not the best Mario Kart games out there. And I think personally, they are just decent in their own unique way. Here's why.
Welcome to Mario Kart!
Mario Kart 64 is a game that I have a ton of nostalgia for. Most people will think this game didn't age very well, but for me, I think it has a little bit of charm that makes it quite enjoyable. For example, being able to take shortcuts is so much fun to try, especially if you have friends to play with who knows about them, creating a little competition of who can speedrun the race the fastest. Tiny things like this makes me appreciate the game for what it is, as the amount of freedom you have to complete the race makes it replayable. Aside from that though, this game is still my least favorite out of the 3. And that is because once you play this game for a little bit, you'll start to get tired of it very quickly as nothing much happens in terms of gameplay. Yes, I did mention shortcuts that make the game a lot more interesting, but that's only by like 12%. The controls aren't really that great either. It's a huge improvement compared to Super Mario Kart, don't get me wrong, but drifting is still an absolute joke. You'll start to figure out how drifting works once you get used to the game, but it's just best to drive normally. However, sometimes driving normally could be a pain in the ass too, as within 150cc, there's a high chance you would spin out for simply no reason. I believe the only way to counter this from happening mid-game is by not accelerating, but even that can be extremely annoying as it ruins the gameplay, which is why when I replay this game, I go for a lower CC for better experience. Again, I have a ton of nostalgia for this game, but it does have its flaws.
Mario Kart Wii! Woohoo!
Mario Kart Wii is a wonderful game, and my personal favorite out of the 3. I love the track courses, the character rosters, and the item choices. It's not as chaotic as Double Dash, but I still found them pretty interesting, such as the Mega Mushroom and the Pow Block. It's quite a shame that these items didn't make a return in 8. Anyways, in terms of controls though, much like Double Dash, I consider them to be at its absolute best. Dare I even say that it's better than 8. It's not as snappy when it comes to drifting, but it's still addicting and fun to pull off, whether it's in the karts or the bikes. Speaking of the bikes, introducing them in this game made me love it a lot more. Drifting is fun, but being able to perform wheelies and inside drifts are just on another level that makes me prefer them over karts, as they feel different and unique. But these mechanics can also cause some problems within the game. The biggest problem with Mario Kart Wii, which is pretty much everyone's complaint with this game, is that it's completely unbalanced. I love the bikes more than the next guy, but I have to admit that they are way too viable in this game that makes the karts completely useless to use. Mario Kart 8 nerfs them heavily, which is understandable, but I feel like they should have at least kept something like the wheelie mechanic, as again, it makes the bikes much more different and unique. Now it feels like a normal kart, but the characters are on the bike, but it's not the end of the world. This game also has some tiny things that I am annoyed with as well. For starters, I don't like how the game urges you to come to a complete stop whenever you hit a wall. Usually when you mess up a turn and hit a wall, you can still somewhat recover from it pretty quickly and get back in the race. This game, however, punishes you for it, as you'll most likely drop from 1st place to 8th within the blink of an eye. I might just be crazy with this one, but I find the blue shell to be extremely common in this game. I cannot tell you how many times I have been hit with a blue shell in one race. 2 to 3 times is fine, but any more than that is just an overkill for me. Again, I love this game as well, but it can find its way to be annoying sometimes.
Mario Kart 8!
I can completely understand if Mario Kart 8 is your favorite one in the series. Not only is it the best looking game in the franchise, but it also has so much content that you really just can't get enough of. It definitely has its own charm to stand out from compared to the rest of the Mario Kart games. One thing I like about Mario Kart 8 the most are the track courses, as they turn a simple track loop into a complete roller coaster ride. Some tracks are pretty good, but I specifically like the ones that switch up with more creative ideas in the later laps, as it helps make the race a lot more interesting and fun. They even managed to make maps I found pretty decent in previous games a lot more replayable and enjoyable, which is also pretty cool. Hopefully in more titles we get to see more courses like this as the franchise continues to grow. However, I think that Mario Kart 8 is a bit underwhelming as a game compared to the previous titles. The roster and the controls is a small problem of its own, but I think Mario Kart 8's biggest problem is the actual gameplay. This game suffers from the fact that it's too rewarding and easy, almost if the game was holding your hand at pretty much everything. Falling off course, for an example, is not as punishing as the previous games. It's an absolute pain to fall off course in any Mario Kart game, as it could cost you the game, but Mario Kart 8 puts you back on course almost immediately, and if you're further ahead than the other racers, you will probably still have a chance to keep your place, while the other games might put you in 5th or lower, which seemed pretty fair, as it reminded the player that it's very important to not fall off course. Another issue that bothers me is the fact that you cannot get hit by multiple items. This becomes extremely annoying when I want to catch up to my opponents, as I have to take my time on throwing my items or else they will pretty much just tank them. And then there are even settings in the game in which you can pretty much play this game on autopilot, where it seems almost impossible to make mistakes and be punished, like smart steering or auto accelerate. On paper, this sounds fine for those who are disabled, old, or too young, as they are more likely to have a hard time getting the hang of the game. But then there are people who use this setting to simply gain an advantage just because they can. I find these tiny things to be triggering, as it seems like most of the time I'm racing with robots who can do no wrong, instead of actual players showcasing their skills. Nintendo, I believe, has always tried to make their games as casual as possible, which isn't really a bad thing, but I also think it's very important to balance it off with some sort of challenge, just to help the players learn and improve while playing, in which I feel like this game just doesn't have. These are clearly nitpicks that can be subjective to be a good or a bad thing. But let's go ahead and discuss the real issue with this game, and that is its defense mechanic. Defending yourself in Mario Kart has always been a thing I believe since 64, but it has become way too OP in this game, as it seems like every item seems to do just that. I want to talk about the speaker specifically because for me personally, I think it's the most broken weapon in the game, as not only is it common to get even in first place, but it also literally defends everything around you. It knocks over players that are too close, stops any weapon from hitting you, and even counters the blue shell, which shouldn't be possible. Even if you want to try to counter the blue shell, it should still take some risk and skill to do so, which the speaker does not. The blue shell's purpose is to help change the game and help players who are struggling in the race, but now since there is a weapon that counters it, it seems very pointless. You're just better off using a lightning bolt to help yourself get back in the race. But even with all that being said, this game is still a fun time, but its biggest flaw of being too casual and safe makes me want to prefer another Mario Kart game instead, as I think they make the gameplay a lot more interesting and less frustrating.